Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Ask the Expert, the Nutrition Edition. My name is Lisbeth Irish, and I will be your host today. I'm a registered dietitian with the New York State Office for the Aging, and I'm also the program manager for SNAP-Ed New York for older adults. Today, we'll be talking about budgeting for a healthy diet. Well, this is a pretty hot topic these days because over the last year, prices of food have increased dramatically. And it's becoming more and more difficult to budget for a healthy diet. But the SNAP-Ed program has a lot of tools. And today we have Allie Hooker with me. She is our expert. Allie is the new supervising nutrition educator for the New York State Office for the Aging SNAP-Ed program in the Franklin region. She's a registered dietitian and has a master's degree in nutrition from the State University College at Oneonta. And that's where I went to school too. It's a good school. Welcome, Allie. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good.
How's everyone else doing today?
Well, I'm doing pretty well. The sunshine is giving me a little spotlight here, but I'll deal with it. It sure beats a cloudy day. So we're very happy to have Allie today, and she's going to share her expertise around how to use SNAP benefits and the SNAP-Ed tools to achieve a healthy diet. But before I turn it over to Allie, I do want to mention that we encourage our audience to put any questions that they might have in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. So take it away, Allie.
All right. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint. All right. So my name is Allie Hooker. Lisbeth just introduced and gave you a little bit of my background. Today I'm going to be talking about eating healthy on a budget. I just recently became the registered dietitian for the Franklin County Office for the Aging. And Franklin County, it spans a ways. So we go all the way to Tupper Lake, Lake Placid area. And then we go to Fort Covington also. So from those 2 points, it's about a 2-hour drive.
Wow, that's a big span.
Yeah, so we do a lot of traveling, needless to say, to get to all the places and see everyone we need to see. But a lot of these towns are small areas that don't have a lot of variety in their stores or anything like that. So it can be hard, especially in this area. And I know a lot of other areas are the same way, to be able to compare and go shopping different places and maintain your budget with the rising food prices. But I have a few points that I just wanted to share with everybody about how to try to stay within your budget. So I'm just going to get started with that.
Thank you.
All right. So my first tip that I wanted to present to you all is it's important to plan your meals ahead. So you want to look at the meals that you enjoy, decide on balanced meals, and I have a picture here of my plate. So that's a good visual representation of how your plate should look in order to have all of the necessary nutritional components in your diet. So you have half your plate should be fruit and vegetables, and then you have your protein, grains, and dairy. And for the dairy especially, you want to choose, and proteins, you want to choose leaner, low-fat options, just to help with the nutritional quality. You don't want to have too much fat in your diet.
Actually, animal fats, right? Sources from animals. Okay.
Yep, because the animal fats, those are the ones that contribute, especially the red meats, have been known to contribute to clogged arteries and
heart disease,
high blood pressure, and all that bad stuff that you don't want to have happen.
So grains are important too, right?
Yep, grains
On
are
the plate.
very important. Yep, that should be a quarter of your plate. You want to try to stick to whole grains. Those are your better options. I know there was a few questions, a few people had commented about their journey with diabetes. Whole grains tend to have a little bit more carbohydrates in them, so you just have to make sure you're looking at the carbohydrate content so you can make sure your carbs are balanced for your diet also. And then if you are looking for recipes or you need to find recipes, the Snap Ed New York Recipe Bank has a lot of good different recipes, and they also can compare prices. It might be a little bit off depending on your area, but there are a lot of good resources through that website.
So that's SNAPED New York, all one word, right? With no hyphen in there, .org. Yep. So that is a great website.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of really good recipes on there too.
Yeah, I noticed there's some tip sheets that are there for lots of different things too.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of good resources overall on the SNAP-Ed website.
Yeah, there's some videos for those recipes too. If people aren't very expert in cooking, I think sometimes those are helpful too, right?
Yes, definitely. That would be very helpful, especially learning technique and learning how to do different things, because I know a lot of times knowing, like reading directions can be challenging to interpret also.
Yep, we have a question about what are some examples of whole grains or foods made with whole grains that are whoops, I can't see that whole question. Wait a minute.
Low cost.
Low cost, okay.
Okay, so typically you can find like whole wheat breads. You want to look for the whole grains that are 100% whole wheat,
Right.
not mixed with stuff. So like breads, bagels, pastas, those are all good like foods to choose. Pasta itself tends to be very low in cost.
Yeah.
And you can usually spread it a long ways also.
Yeah, I think I always look for whole grain, and they aren't necessarily the more expensive breads. Sometimes they might make sure it's not just brown colored bread. Sometimes, you think if you don't check the label, you're not going to really know.
Right. Yeah, you want to make sure there's not a lot of added sugars and stuff like that in your grains.
I just check the fiber content, the number. If it's like 1, that's not very impressive, but if it's 2 or more, it's probably got, kind of gives you can cut through all the words and figure it out.
Yeah, definitely.
How about oatmeal? Is that a good choice?
Oatmeal is a very good choice for a breakfast meal or any time of the day. I know a lot of people now, it's becoming more popular, overnight oats, so you can prepare them ahead of time, so then you don't even have to worry about making them in that moment. You can just, if you're on the go or whatever, you can just grab them and go.
Sometimes I use the 1 minute oatmeal and I put it in it comes in the big canister because it's cheaper usually, and I buy the store brand. It doesn't have to be steel oats or any of that. It's still highly nutritious if it's 1 minute. And I put like my own, like some raisins and maybe a couple nuts, not a lot, but just a few for texture, and maybe a little cinnamon in there. And I put them in little containers ahead of time. That way, if I'm in a rush in the morning or I don't feel like messing with breakfast, it's all ready. I can just add water or milk and microwave it.
Yeah, definitely.
Pretty fast. Yeah, pretty reasonable too.
Right, yeah. A big tub of oatmeal can be pretty cheap, usually. I just saw the chat about, I do good at budgeting. I use my leftovers to turn into soups and casseroles, like cooking chicken, and it lasts a week. that's an excellent option to use leftovers and help with your budget also.
Yeah, I do that. I do that a lot. Sometimes people will buy a rotisserie chicken and they don't know what to do with all those little pieces that are still stuck on there, onto the carcass. And that's a good, good what you can do with that. Sometimes make a soup out of it or throw it in a stir fry.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of things you can do, and even making soups. I mean, it's more time consuming, but even making the stock from like the rotisserie chicken carcass too can help.
Yeah. There's something about white breads that say 6 grams of fiber. I'm not sure about that question.
Yeah, I haven't seen those yet, but I'll definitely keep my eye out for them.
Sometimes I know maybe it's becoming popular again. They used to take fiber from another source and put it in white bread. That kind of went out of, popularity for a while, but maybe it's back. I know when they did studies on those, they said, that fiber was good, but not as valuable nutritionally as the fiber that, comes in that particular grain. So added sources aren't necessarily as good as the ones that come in the actual food itself. You get the fiber, but not.
Yeah. And when you choose the whole grains too that are high in fiber, it helps you stay sustained for longer. So then you're not snacking throughout the day, which can add unnecessary calories.
And it kind of keeps things moving along as long as you're adequately hydrated. Yeah. I see a question about fresh fruits, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, about the fruits and vegetables, right?
And I'm going to go into more of those specifics, like what you can look for that are cheaper options and last longer.
I see a comment about that rotisserie chicken I mentioned. Rotisserie chickens can be pretty salty. That's the downside to those. It depends on where you get it. So I wouldn't, if you're going to eat that and you're making soup out of it, I would not add any salt to that soup. And I would also use low sodium or lower sodium chicken broth, for example. Or make, you can make that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I'm going to move on to tip 2.
Good. Doesn't want to move.
All right. So my second tip that I had put in here was to make a grocery list. So when you are preparing and planning all of your meals, you want to look at what you have in your home, and then from that, make a list of what stuff you actually need, and you want to stick to it. So I know for myself, I have a hard time walking through the store and I'm like, oh, that looks good. So I tend to grab some stuff that I don't necessarily need, which helps, or which ultimately causes me to go out of my budget in some cases. So you want to write the list of what you need and stick to it.
Yep, I agree. Sometimes I make sure I eat something before I, like I have lunch before I go shopping, or, so that I'm not hungry. Because if I'm hungry, everything looks good, and I might buy more than I need, or not necessarily the best choices.
Yeah, you definitely want to go shopping on a
empty stomach.
On a full stomach. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'm going to go into the fruits and vegetables and meats that you want to look for, and they last longer in your freezer or canned goods. So especially in the off season around here, you can't always get fresh fruits or vegetables. So you want to look for either canned or frozen vegetables. Frozen tends to be better because they don't add a lot of additives to it. So they're not as high in salt as canned vegetables tend to be. Even if you buy the low sodium vegetables, the low salt, there's still quite a bit of salt in it just because of the process it takes to can the goods. So if you are buying canned vegetables can be cheaper, especially if you buy the store brand. So you want to rinse the vegetables, drain and rinse the juice and everything off of them, just so it washes away a little bit of that extra salt.
Yeah, I mean, if you really can't find the lower sodium ones or you can't afford them, usually now the prices aren't that different, but in most places. But if you rinse them really well, there are studies that have been done that say you can get a third of the sodium off. But again, that's rinsed really well.
Right.
Beans you probably want to rinse anyway, because sometimes there's kind of gloppy stuff in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Just rinse them really well.
Yeah. And like I said, these last longer so you can have them in storage. So then if you have the opportunity to spend a little bit more with your budget, or not even a little bit more, just if you can grab an extra can. So then later on, if you're having more of a difficult time with your budget, you already have that to incorporate into your meals.
Yeah.
And it lasts. With fruits, canned fruits are an excellent way to get your fruit into your diet. You want to make sure you look for the fruit canned in juice, not syrup. Syrup adds a lot of extra sugar. Whereas like these pineapple chunks on here, they're canned in 100% pineapple juice. So it's not any extra stuff being added to the fruit itself.
Yeah, and sometimes if you buy it in the light syrup and rinse it really well, that's a compromise. Yes, the juice would be better. And you can, if you have diabetes, you want to drain the juice off unless you're going to, kind of work that into your carbohydrate budget.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, sometimes you have to compromise. I know some people will tell me, well, I can't do it right, so I'm not going to bother. I'll just buy the regular stuff. I just can't, I can't get that other kinds, or they just don't eat fruit because they can't feel like they're not doing it right. But it's still better to make compromises like the things we mentioned than not eat the fruit or not eat the vegetables, because what's in them is, really important.
Yeah. And just going back to the comment about how somebody had said that they love fresh vegetables and fruit. Lisbeth, do you know about I know in the summertime there's farmers market coupons available for
senior farmers market program coupons. Yes, they are available to eligible people. I think a lot of times it's just learning how to budget, how to prepare. The tools that we have is SNAP-Ed. That's what we teach. I mean, and Allie will be teaching workshops up in her area where we go into a lot of detail at our workshops all over the state by our nutrition educators in our different regions that help you make do with what you can afford. Even when you're on a strict budget, you can do things like Allie's talking about and really, cut back on the amount of money you spend on your food. So a lot of it's having the skills and knowing what's nutritious also helps, because you don't want to, not that you don't want to ever eat a cookie or chips or soda, but if you spend the bulk of your budget on foods that are good for you, that helps too. And also portion control. Sometimes we just eat too much of certain foods, and that's raising our budget too. So knowing how much and what to eat is helpful in budgeting, I think.
Yeah. And I know I personally, I shop at Aldi, and a lot of times they have, even in the off season, they have sales for fresh fruits and vegetables that you can buy. So you can always look into those also. And if you haven't had it in a while, like that certain produce in a while, or you aren't sure if you'll like it, you could always try to find a recipe that incorporates those foods that are on sale, So then you can still get the fresh fruits and vegetables into your diet, even in the off season.
Yeah. And you have a short growing season up in Franklin County, right? So
Yes.
even though it's ideal to buy things locally and, they'll be very fresh and they might be most of the times they're more economical. But if you have a very short growing season, it's tough. Sometimes you do have to rely on frozen and canned and or if you can't go to the store very often, fresh things sometimes don't last very long. If you only can get to the store once a month, you kind of have to figure out ways to keep fruits and vegetables in your diet after you run out of the fresh produce.
Yeah, definitely.
Somebody said they cut up their celery and carrots so they're quick to cook. My father is 97. He just celebrated his 97th birthday, and he cuts up carrots smaller. He actually puts them in the microwave to soften them up a little bit because his teeth aren't as good as they used to be. And he eats those for a snack every day. He does that with broccoli too. So sometimes, they're quick. He'll cut them up ahead of time because he may not be having a good day and want to cut them up that day.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good idea to prep them ahead of time. So then it's easier to use too. I know I have a hard time. I have a bunch of carrots in my fridge and then I'm just like, oh, I really don't feel like doing that. So whereas if they were prepared ahead of time, a lot of people would be more apt to use them. So then they don't go to waste.
When I had a young family, I used to try to do some of the prep for the next day while I was cooking dinner that night, because some days are busy or you just, you're super tired. You're going to have a busy schedule. If you can do some of it the day before. But I also think what you said was really important, the planning. When you plan, it's already, and you have the right things available, it takes a lot of that stress away. You know what you're going to eat. You're not going to order out because you don't.
Right.
Go out to eat because you didn't make a plan. I think you save a lot of money when you know what you're doing. I'm having a hard time reading these chat questions. I have to move mine over here. Whoop, that didn't work.
Oh, there's a comment about I love all these produce sales, but I found I overdid it as a diabetic with the fruit.
Yeah,
that's definitely can happen. Fruit's very hot, it naturally has a lot of carbohydrates in them, so you want to make sure that you're regulating that for sure.
Well, and a lot of times if you spread it out over the day, I'm a diabetes educator too, and if you spread it out over the day, your body can metabolize it or break it down, and your blood sugars will, be more even if you don't eat it all at once.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's
one about, I can't read that whole one. I will make something of peppers and onions.
A pan full of peppers and onions and keep it in the fridge, and a spoon or two is good, and eggs added to any dish. They're all ready, so I'm more apt to eat them. Yeah, that's definitely. Definitely. And adding.
I think, making an omelet with things, or, you can even use frozen vegetables that are thawed out, cooked, whatever. It depends how long your items, your recipe calls for cooking. But I even microwave a little bit of vegetables in a little bit of water in a coffee mug sometimes if I think I need a few more, and then they're ready, they're ready in minutes. And I could add those to an omelet too.
This next comment that somebody had said, to save money, you don't need organic produce on all things. You're absolutely correct. Yep.
Yeah. It's more important to eat fruits and vegetables than to buy organic versions. People that do studies on this will tell you it's far more important to eat them. If you can't afford organic, just, eat the regular ones. To not eat them, it would be a less good choice.
Right. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move on.
Good. I'm anxious to see the fourth tip. Oh, yeah.
All right. So my fourth tip is to shop with coupons and sales. So I kind of talked about this with the Aldi fruits and vegetable sales. You can always look ahead at flyers that stores post and see what's going to be on sale. So then you can plan your meals around the sale products, especially if you really love fresh carrots and you want to incorporate those into your meals. You can, and they're on sale, you can incorporate them a little bit more maybe.
Yeah, we do that every week. We look at the sales and then plan our meals around that.
Yeah. There's a lot of good resources for coupons. You can search coupons, you can online, you can go get some from the stores. Usually in those flyers, there's a lot of times some coupons, depending on the store, but you can look at the foods that you need and see if you can find any coupons around it to use.
Yeah, I used to use coupons a lot. The one thing I had to be careful of was not to buy things I didn't need because I had a coupon.
Yep, that can be a challenge for sure.
It's a good buy, but then you've spent some money that you could have spent someplace else.
Right. And then shopping generic brand rather than name brand can save you a lot of money. So rather than Campbell's soup, choosing the generic brand can save you quite a bit of money in the long run for sure.
Sometimes the generics are actually better than the name brands, but you can try them once and see what you think.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, what did I do? Okay.
I think we went through your tips.
Yep, those were all my tips. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? I was trying to get to the
I had a few. I'm gonna just look at my notes here and see. Oh, I know. What do you think of myplate.gov? It's another website that I think is probably pretty good. What do you think about it, Allie?
Yeah, I've used MyPlate a lot. They have a lot of good resources for how to plan your meals, how to divide up your plate, different good choices for what to include in your diet. They have a lot of good resources. MyPlate.
Yeah, good. What do you suggest people do if they're having trouble affording protein sources? Meats can be a big part of your grocery bill, chicken, fish, they can be a little pricey. What would you suggest people use if they really can't afford those things?
Yeah, so you can use alternate protein sources. These include beans, tofu, lentils. Those are all excellent sources of protein. Beans can be incorporated into a lot of different meals, and those are the main sources other than animal products that have good sources of protein would be your beans and lentils. And then the soybean tofu is also a good option. I know a lot of people can be on the edge with that, but
well, it took me a long time to learn how to cook tofu that I liked, and we have an air fryer. We're fortunate that we have one, and that's a great way to cook it. Sometimes we marinate it and then some, maybe some spices and things like that to give it a little more flavor. But we also put it in the air fryer and it crisps up a little better that way. And you also have to press it if you buy the extra firm, and you press it really hard by putting like a heavy pan on top with a paper towel underneath and between the pan and the tofu. That helps get some of the extra water out of there. But it takes a little time to figure out how to work with that sometimes.
I don't have much experience with preparing tofus, but I've heard it can be very challenging.
Yeah, it took us a while to get the hang of it. But we use beans in a lot of things, like we make tacos or enchiladas, or, lots of Mexican foods with beans, soups, just lots of things with beans. We do eggplant parmesan when eggplant's on sale. We bake our eggplant. We don't fry it. It's a lot less messy too.
Mhm.
And that one eggplant goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, those can get big for
Yeah.
sure.
One thing that I use that I always find hard to explain though is unit pricing. Are you familiar with that, Allie?
Would that be just breaking down the individual cost of?
Well, when you go to a grocery store and you see that, they have the price there and then they have this other thing next to it.
Yeah.
Usually in orange. The information in orange tells you the price per ounce or the price per pound or whatever, and you can compare between different brands, which is the better buy, because like if you were buying, I'm trying to think of a good example, pasta, for example, and, one was in a big box and one was in a little box. And if you look at the prices, you're trying to figure out which is the better buy. The information in the orange part of the label on the shelf, you usually want to go with the lower number. That means you're getting a lower cost per ounce. I know that's kind of complicated, but generally that helps people figure out what's the better buy, because sometimes it's hard to know. Especially packaging, you could have a package that's this big, but there's only this much food in it.
Yes.
So you don't really know what you're getting.
Yeah.
But that's a good way to figure it out.
Yeah, definitely.
That's a whole class, though, to explain that sometimes. It says, unfortunately, a lot of sale items are in large quantities, requiring you to buy 2 heads of lettuce when it's too much for one person, family packs of meat.
So, I mean, for the family packs of meat, if they're on sale and you can work that into your budget, you can always prepare or like separate out the meat and freeze it so you can use it at a later time. Yeah. Even if you have to cook it ahead of time, you can always cook it and then cool it and then freeze it that way. So then even then it's all prepared for you. You just have to thaw it and reheat it.
Yeah. And sometimes if you know other people or family members, if you have to buy 2 heads of lettuce, maybe you can share it with somebody and they could give you one of, if they had to buy too many apples, they came in if you buy a whole bag of apples, I find it very difficult to get through those. Maybe you give some, they could give you some apples and you could give them the lettuce, if you have family members that would share or friends.
Then somebody had a question, what are some low cost and healthy breakfast ideas? So we did talk about the oatmeal. That's low cost and is very healthy, depending on what you put in it. If you load a bunch of maple syrup and brown sugar, it might not be as healthy, but it tastes good.
You just a little.
But yeah, so and eggs, they tend to be a very low cost item. I know lately the prices were started to climb a little bit, but you can usually, you make a egg casserole or something and then section it off, and then you have breakfast for the week, or you can make eggs tend to be a low cost food item for breakfast.
Yeah.
Do you have any other
or
ideas?
Any meal too?
Yeah.
How long, I know people always wonder about how long you can keep things. I know the FDA changed, the Food and Drug Administration said now you can keep most things for a week. Sometimes I notice the quality goes down after a couple days. It's not quite as tasty. So sometimes I do freeze things, if I don't think it's going to be good by the end of the week.
Yeah, and even the recommendation for keeping it a whole week also, you want to make sure you're handling the food safely.
Right.
So the bacteria doesn't grow, and make
Yeah.
sure everything's cooled properly.
Yeah, and it's covered and all that stuff.
Right.
Wrapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any other ideas for low cost healthy breakfast?
Yeah, I sometimes will do, I'll buy the store brand of yogurt, a Greek yogurt, and I'll add things to it. Sometimes I'll make pancakes, a whole grain pancake, and I'll freeze them. And then it sounds weird, but I put yogurt over the top, like, the blended yogurts, I put that over the top instead of syrup. I don't really like syrup, so I just don't like the taste. So I put that over my pancakes, or I might put frozen fruit can be kind of expensive, but sometimes if it's on sale, I'll do that. Or applesauce, or even baby fruit, if you have children in the house and they don't like pears, then you could use the baby fruit over your pancakes sometimes. Or what else? French toast, you can do the same thing. You can make it ahead and freeze it. Those aren't too expensive to make. It's more about what you put on top is whether it's healthy or not, and how much of it you eat. But sometimes I freeze things in individual like containers. So if it's frozen and I only take out what I can eat, then I'm not tempted to overeat because it's frozen. The rest of it's still in the freezer. Yeah. So those are some ideas. You can also eat any food for breakfast, to be quite honest. I have a niece who will eat a leftover meal from the night before, beef stew or whatever. That's not me, but she loves it. She didn't care. She'll eat whatever last night's dinner. She'll heat up and have that. And, if it's a balanced meal, it doesn't matter if it's a breakfast food or not. Yeah. So I also wondered, what do you think about winter eating? I know a lot of people feel like they eat more during the winter. Do you think there are reasons for that? I have some ideas, but I was just curious about yours,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, during the winter, it's chilly. You want all that comfort food. When you snack or when you eat, your body temperature does warm you up. Just the reaction that eating that has on your body, and as your body digests it, does warm you up. A lot of times you tend to be cooped up in the house, so it can be easy to snack more throughout the day if you're just snuggled up on the couch or doing chores or anything like that. Especially around the holidays, it can be hard to, they always have the sales at the stores with the
goodies.
Yes, the goodies. That's a good way to put it. So it can be hard during the winter to not overeat, because you tend to, I know I personally tend to want to eat a little bit more because I'm in the comfort, the heat's on. So
yeah, one of the things I do is I'll have a cup of tea, or I'll make a vegetable broth-based soup, and I'll try to have that if I'm cold, as opposed to eating, snacking on something else to warm up. I think of a few things. And if you're bored, sometimes I like to come up with a hobby. I'll even do like Scrabble on my phone or solitaire on my phone. If my hands are busy, sometimes I can't, I try to make a point of not putting things in my mouth and handling my phone. So that sometimes helps me. Or having a hobby, sometimes you can, keep yourself occupied so you're not bored. I know carbohydrates sometimes have a calming effect on people. So if they're, feeling upset about something, sometimes people will eat carbohydrates to feel calmer. And sometimes that's a tip that maybe, if you're feeling depressed or whatever, or upset, maybe, talking to somebody, a professional, your doctor might be helpful. The winter can be very depressing for some people. There's things like seasonal affect disorder that runs in my family. That means, when it's a cloudy day, you might not be as happy as a sunny day. So there's different things you can do for that too. So, sometimes we self-medicate with food, but maybe we need some help from our healthcare providers, instead of, trying to manage it on our own. Sometimes we just need that support from other people, or professional or family.
Yeah.
I also try to do more exercise. Like I'll bundle up and go outside for a walk and dress in layers. Do some yoga or some stretching exercises. When the TV's on, I try to get up during the commercials so I don't look at the food commercials. I don't like commercials anyway, but it helps when I'm not looking at that food, telling me to eat something. I'll get up and do a load of laundry, or I'll wash a dish or something like that. Trying to think. Is there any other questions we have in the chat? Don't see any. We might wrap it up today because I think a lot of people are busy today and they got places to go and things to do. So I think we'll wrap it up a little bit early today, if that's okay, unless there's anything else, Allie, that you'd like to share with the audience.
No, I can't think of anything else at the moment.
Okay, great. Well, we want to thank Allie for sharing her expertise and time with us today, and I hope she'll come back. She was a great guest.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome, and I look forward to working with you too in the SNAP-Ed program. I also want to thank the audience for sharing their thoughts and questions in the chat. That really helps, everybody when you do that. And I hope you'll join us next month for Ask the Expert. It will be January 13th, which is a Friday the 13th, easy to remember, at 1:00. And then we also have a new What's Cooking with NYSOFA episode coming up at 12:30 Friday, December 23rd, and that's with Wendy Beckman. Wendy is also a registered dietitian with the New York State Office for the Aging, and she'll be making a delicious recipe. And I want to let you know that Ask the Expert is funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They fund the SNAP-Ed program, and they are an equal opportunity provider. So with that, I will say goodbye and have a wonderful rest of the month till we see you in January. Bye-bye now.